Wrong way. There's one more. You may be seated. All right, Judge Burke, if you would please. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Moran.
Thank you, Your Honor. Judge, when we broke, we were talking about you going to the hospital for treatment. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And you indicated that the police drove you there that night, and you were admitted as a patient. Is that correct?
I was.
Okay. And once you were in the hospital, did you receive any medical attention for the injury you sustained?
Yes, I received immediate medical attention in the emergency room and then in surgery. And
so when you were admitted to the hospital, the first contact you had with doctors was in the emergency room, correct?
Yes.
And then you received treatment for the injury, the gunshot wound, correct?
Yes, I did.
That was that night?
I received treatment that night, and the treatment continued beyond that.
You indicated a moment ago that there was a surgical intervention as a result of the gunshot wound?
Yes. So
there
was. I had a number of surgeries. Yes.
Let's start with the first one. When was the first surgery that you had as a result of the gunshot wound?
Well, it's funny because I can't remember if it was actually that night or the next day, but the first thing that they did was to remove the bullet. So the bullet hit my knee. They call it the condyle of your femur. So your femur is the big bone in your thigh bone, essentially. And at the bottom of your femur are these two bulbs that stick out almost like a dog bone.
And for the record, you're holding both clenched together in the fashion of a dog bone, is that correct?
Yes, so that there are the two bulbs on each side of your femur. So the bullet struck the inside femur, almost right in the center, and shattered that part of the bone, and then entered the knee and lodged right behind my kneecap. And so there was no exit wound. There was a hole, and then the bullet was lodged in my knee. And so the first surgery they did was to remove that bullet, and the pieces of the condyle, the way the doctor described it, he just sort of pushed it together because the bone has like a sheath of tissue that's around it, and the bullet had pierced that, but it was still intact. And so the doctor was basically able to take the pieces of bone and push them sort of back into shape, and then they put a big gigantic bandage around it for that first surgery.
So the first surgery they actually took the bullet out of your leg.
Yes, that's right.
And they wrapped your leg up. They sent you home?
No, I did not know what to expect. I thought maybe it would be something like that they would just put an ace bandage on and I could go home after a couple days, but it was a lot more complicated as it turned out.
What do you mean it was a lot more complicated?
They indicated that in order for it to heal, they would have to install what they call external fixators, which is the second surgery that they did. What an external fixator is, it's almost like an external cast, if you will. So there are these steel rods that go along your leg, and then they take two screws and they screwed these steel rods into my shin here in two different screws, and two screws into my thigh up at the top, and that's what kept the external fixators there. And they were stationary, so they kept your leg straight, almost like a cast would. And they were serving the same function as a cast. And so the first surgery that I had was to install those external fixators, and that was basically to allow the bone to heal, just like if you had a broken leg. I mean, it was a lot like a broken leg, really. Then they decided they needed to put a stronger external fixator on, so a sort of a double bar situation instead of one bar. So then I had another surgery to put the double bar on. And those were the three surgeries that I had probably within the first week or so of being in the hospital.
Once those fixators were on your leg, sir, were you able to move around, bend the leg, walk on it?
No, I couldn't walk. So I couldn't walk at that point, and I couldn't walk for another 3 months or so.
So were you immobilized for that time period?
Yes,
So
that's
you
right.
could not put pressure on the leg?
Could not put, no weight bearing is what they say. No weight bearing. I had crutches. So initially I had a walker, then I had crutches, and other than that I was just kind of in the easy chair.
So those were the three initial surgeries you had to remove the bullet and apply the two surgeries for the fixators, correct?
Yes.
Did you have the additional surgeries?
Yes, well, put it this way, I had additional surgery that was scheduled, and it was surgery because it involved removing the external fixators. And it was supposed to, as the healing process went on, I was going to see the doctor once a week, and he would take x-rays, and sometimes they would take MRIs. It looked as if, and he was under the impression, the doctor was under the impression that it was not healing that well. It's what they call non-union, which means the bone didn't mend that well. They thought it might have been because of an infection at some point, because one of these pins, these screws that go into my bone, they call them pins, and you had to do what they call pin care. So you had to, my wife would have to clean it off. But anyway, it developed an infection in that part of the wound, which was unpleasant, but eventually that healed. But they were worried that the infection might have gotten in the bone, and that was what was causing it not to heal well. And so the doctor had scheduled a surgery that was going to involve a bone graft, which would be taking bone matter from my hips or pelvis area and putting that into the area where the bullet had hit the femur, and then putting in plates and screws in there to stabilize the area of the bone that was not healing. Now, that was scheduled, and I don't know if you want me to stop or not, but
That surgery was not performed, however, was it?
the surgery was performed by removing the fixators,
Correct.
but it turned out they didn't need to do the plates and the screws because it actually had healed, even though the doc thought it hadn't healed.
After that, the fixators were removed. Were you able to start putting pressure on your leg?
Not immediately.
Was there physical therapy involved?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So I started physical therapy toward the end of May.
Oh, 2015.
Yes. And initially I was going twice a week, and I had this machine that was helping me to bend my knee again, and then I also received physical therapy exercises that I was supposed to do at home, and so I had to do the exercises 5 times a day, and I did my exercises very faithfully 5 times a day, and slowly but surely got better.
Are you 100% now, Jennifer?
I wouldn't say 100%. I completed my physical therapy in November. I recently signed up for another batch of physical therapy, about 3 months worth, to see if I could get it a little bit stronger. The good thing is that I can walk. It's not perfect though. It still causes me some pain, and I can't do all the things that I used to do.
What sort of things can't you do anymore?
I was a runner, a regular runner, and I don't run with my running group. Can't run with my running group.
Is that because of the injuries you received when you were shot?
Yes. I'm trying to see if I can get to that point. I've been starting to do a little bit of walking and jogging to see if I can get back to that point. I'm not sure I will.
But to this day, more than 14 months later, you still have pain in the leg.
I do, yes.
So it's not what you thought would be a Band-Aid or an ACE bandage situation going
No,
far from.
it wasn't, no.
May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibits 507 and 508. If you would, Judge, take a look at those.
Okay, yeah.
Do you recognize those photographs, sir?
Yes.
What are they? What do they depict?
Okay, this is the bullet. This is the bullet wound in my knee there. Yeah.
Okay. And the other photograph, what does it depict?
That also shows the bullet wound, and this shows the fixators. If I'm recognizing this, this is when there was only one bar going down, and they later added the second bar. So, yep, those are that's the bullet hole.
Move to admit, Your Honor, 507 and 508.
Without objection. Thank you.
507 and 508 will be received.
Did you tell us, Judge Berger, I'm sorry, I think I may have missed it. The second individual that was by the tree, did you describe him for us?
He was wearing black clothing also. He was also a slender African-American male. I didn't get a great look at his face because he was farther away. I could see him. He had some kind of a hat on or a hood over his head so that I couldn't really see his hair.
Height, weight, could you describe that?
He also appeared to be average height.
Not taller than you.
Not from what I could tell. I don't think he was much taller. He may have been.
But he was never on the porch with you.
Correct. He stayed down by the tree.
The person that was on the porch with you, however, you described for us previously. I would ask you, Judge, if you would just take a look around the room. Do you see anyone in the courtroom that could possibly have been there that night?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that question.
Rephrase the question.
Okay.
Right, it's speculative.
All right.
Rephrase the question.
Do you see anyone in the courtroom that you recognize?
Well, I see a number of people that I recognize, but I know we're talking about that night. And so the individual who I saw that night, as I said, he was a nice-looking young man. He had somewhat distinctive-looking eyes. As I look at the defendant here, who's seated in the chair there with the black suit on, his eyes are similar. I see a similar type of look to the shape of his eyes, but that's really all I could say about that.
When you pointed, you're talking about the defendant here, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. That individual right there.
For the record, pointing to the defendant, Kevin Smith, and that's the individual that you recognize, that you indicate that his eyes are similar to the eyes you saw the person who shot you that night.
That's right.
That's all I have.
Mr. McWilliams, you want to start, please?
I do, Your Honor. And good afternoon, Judge Burke.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'm very sorry we're meeting like this under the circumstances. You see a lot of defense lawyers from time to time in your courtroom.
I do.
Okay, and you're over at the federal court. I think it's called Charles Levin Courthouse on Lafayette.
Theodore Levin, but yes.
Theodore Levin, thank
Yes.
you. All right. And you've been a judge for several years now. Yes?
3.5 years.
Okay, and before that you were an assistant attorney, Michigan Attorney General?
I was, and also an assistant U.S. attorney. Yes.
Yes, for a number of years. There
Yes,
in the
I was.
office. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you live over on Oak Street in the city of Detroit?
Oak Drive, I do.
Oak Drive, and matter of fact, you've had several homes there apparently on that street or in that area in the past?
Well, we've lived in the same house the whole time. There was a house that was being sold in foreclosure that someone from our church ended up buying and asked us if we wanted to buy it. It needed to be fixed up. So we ended up fixing up
Okay.
one of the houses on our street, but we never lived there.
I understand now. Thank you very much. The fact of the matter is, you cannot positively identify the person who did this shooting to you on the night of March the 5th, 2015. Isn't that true, sir?
That's true.
Okay, thank you. As a matter of fact, the person who did that apparently was wearing some type of hat or cap. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, isn't it true that that person was wearing some type of mask?
No, there was no mask.
There was no
whatsoever.
mask?
No.
No, nothing covered in their nose, mouth, or face?
No, sir.
Okay. You've described the action of the person who pulled the weapon, and I think you said that they had reached into their jacket. It looked like maybe into a short jacket. Wouldn't you say that?
I don't know if it was a short jacket,
Okay.
or I don't think it was a long overcoat, if that's
Right.
what you mean, but
Okay, it was some kind of jacket.
yes, it was jacket.
And they reached into apparently something above their waistband towards their chest area, correct?
That's what I remember.
Okay, and also I think you testified that you remember that they pulled that weapon out and immediately, boom, shot you.
I don't know if I'd say immediately. There was a pause there. There was a pause.
Okay, all right, there was a pause, and you were then shot in the leg. Is that correct?
Yes.
How far away from that person were you, or that person close to you at that particular time?
He was no more than 2 or 3 feet away from me.
Okay, pulled it out in a kind of a rhythmic fashion. Would you agree with that? And then shot you?
The way I would describe it is that he pulled it out more from the standpoint of brandishing it, in the sense that I think rather than to sort of order me to go into the house, he was showing me the gun. He said, "We have a gun." Then he showed me the gun.
Okay.
Then there was a pause there as I was saying, "No, no, no," and then he shot
Then
me.
he shot you. Okay, thank you very much. And that is the description that you were giving us in this courtroom today as to what happened.
Yes.
Okay. You would then agree with me that that gun was not aimed at your head,
It was not.
okay? Was not aimed at your torso,
No.
which
Thank
is your,
goodness it was
your
not.
body below your neck to your waist. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And it was never aimed at your pelvic area,
No.
okay? It was aimed at your knee. Isn't that correct?
The bullet hit me in the knee.
Hit you in the knee.
It looked like he was aiming at my leg. Yeah.
Right. And you've got quite a hole there in your knee, and that's what is in that exhibit that you've just recently observed. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you went to the hospital for that wound. Have you ever gone under an alias or any other name besides Terrence Berg that you know of?
I did that night.
Uh-huh. Well, tell us about that.
I don't remember whether my wife told me or whether one of the doctors told me, but I had a hospital band on
Yes.
that said Bill Donahue.
Yes.
Bill Donahue was my best friend, is my best friend from high school, and he was quite amused that he got to be my secret identity for that night. Yes.
Okay. It was like an alias so that if there was anything more of a national or any other type of connection, that you would be secreted into the hospital setting. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Oh, I think the idea was to keep my name secret.
And identity.
Yes.
And especially if there was any national or international complications. Isn't that correct?
I suppose so.
Yes. Okay, well, on the evening in question, you were home when the lady from the newspaper came to visit your son. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
You'd already arrived at home? You were there?
I believe I was there the whole time that Patty Montemori was there.
Okay. And during that period of time, dinner was served?
Yes.
In the course of the dinner that evening, were there any adult beverages served or consumed by either you, the wife, or your guest?
No.
Okay. Your son was there?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point in time, there was, it was time for her to leave. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And as I understand it, the sidewalks, although they look very well manicured and shoveled and everything, apparently there had been a melt and then a freeze, and your guest was walked out to her car.
That's right.
Would would the walk out to the car be more for courtesy, or would there be any part of the fact that she was walked out to her car for the purpose of security?
Well,
It may not be an either-or question,
Yes.
Mr. McWilliams, if you want to rephrase it.
Yes. What was the purpose of you walking her out to her car?
I think the main thing was ice.
Yes.
The ice was significant. But walking someone to their car when it's at night is not a bad idea for security as well.
Yes. Is that a fairly common routine or practice, or could it be in your household?
For women, yes.
Okay.
Not as much for
All right.
guys.
I understand. And had you done that for other guests, female guests?
Sure.
Okay.
I know I have. Yeah.
All right. And is there any particular reason, because of security problems or a neighborhood watch or something like that in your community and your neighborhood?
No particular reason other than just, as you say, for security.
Okay. Well, do you have any security on that particular day? Did you have any security in particular, lights or sounding equipment or emergency alarms or anything like that?
We do have an alarm.
Mm-hmm.
We do have an alarm.
Okay.
But
Any panic button or anything like that?
I think we do have a panic button too.
Okay.
Somewhere.
Now, as I saw you use the pointer up there and describe your property very vividly, do I understand that although you went up your approach to your porch, that the two persons were coming from, not from the direction of where the car was, but from a different direction?
That's exactly right. They were
Okay.
not coming from the vehicle.
That's what I sensed. Did you ever see what the possibility, and we're not talking about the lady from the newspaper's vehicle, we're talking about the vehicle that was parked someplace else, isn't that true?
Yes, it was the vehicle parked on Oak Drive.
Right. And do you have any sense of how all of a sudden people are coming from an opposite direction from a car that you think they may have come from another direction?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's because that's the way it was planned.
I see. Well, you never saw it. You never saw them circle around, did you? Because that's what they would have had to have done, wouldn't they?
I didn't see them in the act of circling, no.
Okay.
I saw two individuals getting out of a car. Then I saw two individuals coming from another direction. Then I saw the same individuals that came from the other direction run and get into the car that I saw the individuals get out of before.
Okay, I understand that now. Let's just talk about after the fact that you had been shot for a moment and were on your side on the deck of your porch.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about. And you did make a conscious effort to look and see what those persons were doing, because you said that they hightailed it out of there, correct?
Yes.
And they ran to a vehicle.
Yes.
Okay. And you know the difference between the lookout and the shooter in this case, do you not?
I hadn't necessarily thought of the number 2 guy as a lookout, but yes, I saw both
He
of
was
them.
there. He did not exactly participate in the alleged attempted holdup. So
Right.
maybe, and he was laying back, was he?
He was.
Okay. But anyhow, both of them ran to a vehicle.
They ran.
And you have, in fact, given a statement, have you not, with regard to what sides and what doors of a vehicle these two persons entered. Isn't that correct?
I may have given that in a statement.
All right.
I can't remember for sure
All right,
right now.
let me see if I can refresh your memory. Do you recall saying during the investigation of this matter that the person who fired the shot was in control of the gun that shot you, ran and opened up and got into the driver's side of the vehicle, and the other person ran to the vehicle and got into the passenger side of the vehicle, front seat? both getting into the front seat. Do you remember saying that?
That's what I think, yes.
Okay, you're not speculating on that. Your memory is now refreshed that that's what you said and that is what you believe happened?
It would help if I saw my statement to be absolutely sure, but when you say it, that does refresh my recollection.
Okay, good. Now, let's just talk about a little bit about your recollection, because I can imagine that being in trauma, which you were, correct? Yes?
I think I was, must have been.
Okay. That going to the hospital, when you arrived at the hospital, were you immediately seen by either state, or were you seen by federal officers or local officers?
There were a lot of people at the hospital. I think I was seen by both federal and Detroit police.
Did you sense or feel that you were exclusively seen by only federal officers?
No.
Okay. All right. And were law enforcement officers talking to you at the hospital immediately?
I think they were, yes.
Okay. And did you sense that they were taking down information from you with regard to what it is they were asking you?
Yes.
Okay. And were you being administered pain relief medicines immediately? Or were you lucid? Were you conscious at the time when you were brought in?
A couple of questions.
Yes. Were you conscious when you were brought in?
I was completely conscious the entire
Okay,
time.
thank you. And when these officers, law enforcement persons began to talk to you, as I understand immediately there, were you conscious?
Yes.
Okay. And you answered them in a conscious fashion, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. And were there times thereafter that you have some recollection that you were asked questions which you may not have been as conscious or lucid as you ordinarily would be because of medication?
Well, I don't remember ever being interviewed when I was under the influence of some kind of medication.
Are you aware you were given high-powered narcotic drugs?
Well, they weren't working that well.
They make you sick too?
No, I don't remember being sick. I just
Okay.
remember that whatever these painkillers were, they didn't really seem to kill very much pain.
I know.
Mr. McWilliams,
Yes, Your Honor.
I think we may have to break at this
Very well. Thank you very much for that suggestion.
Judge, we'll need to have you back here in the morning.
All right.
We'll be back at, everybody have a seat, please, until all of the jurors have left. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask you to come back at 10 minutes to 9 in the morning. Leave your binders on your chair. Don't check in at the jury assembly room. Come right up. The door will be open. Come right in and go into my jury room. All right? Now, I'm going to say something that, you know, I'm sort of have mixed feelings about telling you this. You know, it's almost like saying don't think about pink elephants. But it's, obviously, there are cameras that are here. And I don't want this to be a situation like a friend of mine who was in the Marine Corps. They were out in the Pacific there for a while. And they came into, they had Liberty there in the Philippines. And the gunnery sergeant gets up there and he says, now listen, here's the places you can't go to. Right? And what do? Oh, wait a minute, let me get that down. Where can't I go? All right? Well, what I am going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, as I've told you during the jury selection process, is that you're not to watch the news, read the newspapers until this case is over. But your decision making in this case is going to be based on what you hear in this particular courtroom. Doesn't matter what anybody else in the universe says. It's only what goes on here in this courtroom. All right? So watch anything else, watch all kinds of TV programs, anything you want to watch. But when the news comes on, turn it off. All right? We'll see you here 10 minutes to 9 in the morning.
All right.
Good evening.
Once you guys gather your stuff, you can just head out the front door, please.
And I can leave, I haven't...
Yep, if you guys have everything, you guys can just go out the front door, please.
Thank you.
Yep. You don't have to go in.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, all right, I'm going to go back. Hold on, there's one more. Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith. Hold on. Hold on. Maybe seated. Mr. Smith.
Okay. Thanks.
Appreciate
it.
And so clearly and distinctly, and you're such a good
You're doing all the hard work.
We need to get more witnesses like you.
How are you doing? I'm doing fine. How are you? All right.